And now from tensions in South America to the crisis in Europe, Germany is racing to prepare for a scenario it once considered unthinkable: a direct military confrontation between NATO and Russia. A classified 1,200-page strategy known as OPLAN DEU lays out how up to 800,000 NATO troops could be moved across Germany territory towards the Eastern Front if Russia launched an attack on the alliance. Now, the plan revealed by the Wall Street Journal marks the most serious shift in German defense thinking since the end of the Cold War. The report was drafted shortly after Russia's full-scale invasion in Ukraine back in 2022. A small team of senior German officers spent months designing a system that blends military, civilian, and private sector resources. In fact, the document is so sensitive that it's stored only on Germany's isolated red network far away from the internet. The blueprint maps out the movement of troops from western ports and airfields across Germany using roads, rivers, railways, and key bridges. It details how convoys would be protected from sabotage, drones, cyber attacks, and misinformation. And the plan also highlights a major weakness. Decades of underinvestment have left 20% of highways and more than a quarter of bridges in urgent need of repair. And to fix this, Berlin is preparing to spend 168 billion euros, or about 181 billion US dollars, on infrastructure by 2029, including more than $109 billion on railways and dual-use facilities. Ports in the North and Baltic Sea alone need $16.4 billion in upgrades.
The goal is to prevent war by making it clear to our enemies that if they attack us, they won't be successful.
Now, the urgency comes as European intelligence agencies warn that Russia could be ready to test NATO's borders far earlier than expected. In fact, some German officials point to espionage cases, sabotage attempts, and drone incursions as signs Moscow is preparing for confrontation. A possible ceasefire in Ukraine, they warn, could free up Russian troops and equipment for a much wider campaign across the continent. Countries are also preparing for worst-case scenarios. France plans to revive its military national service. Poland is expanding military training for adults. Several Baltic nations have pulled out of the Ottawa Convention banning anti-personnel landmines. The EU is also developing a new anti-drone shield to counter Russian threats. Germany's chancellor underscored the urgency last week, saying it's increasingly urgent for Europe to use frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine. He warned, quote, "The threats are real. We are not at war, but we no longer live in peacetime." End quote.
We are trying to reach a joint solution within the European Union. Before the last council meeting, I proposed using such a loan against Russia's assets to finance Ukraine for the next 3 years. I see an increasingly urgent need to do this. Ukraine needs our support. Russian attacks are increasing. Winter is approaching, or rather, we are already in winter, and I therefore hope that we can reach a joint solution within the European Union.
Damit dies wirklich auch im großen Konsens in der Europäischen Union beschlossen werden kann.
Europe is now rebuilding structures it once dismantled because the question no longer seems to be if the continent will be tested, but a matter of when.
They promised glory. They delivered fear. They shaped nations. They scarred generations. From brutal purges to propaganda machines, from stolen power to violent falls from the throne. Welcome to The Dictator, a series that strips away the myth and then exposes the men behind the tyranny. History remembers their power. Firstpost reveals their truth.